Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters.
Great news for the American people.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Branden Rathert, featuring Stephanie Bell, News Director Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you.
Get ready, pal. And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
It was a big President's Day for our current president because earlier this morning, Biden made a surprise visit to Kiev. Boom. There you go. I assume it was only a surprise to us and not to the Ukrainians. Incoming! It appears Russia is attacking Kyiv with very slow-moving White Walker. Okay, no. False alarm. We have subdued him with butterscotch.
Stephen Colbert, I think that's called cultural appropriation. And then if you affect the accent of somebody else,
I think that's right.
Cultural appropriation. Welcome into the show. Stephen Colbert last night on Joe's Visit. And we're not done with Joe on the worldwide stage yet. He's got more toys he's going to get out and play. I think he's in Poland today. And it's always, seriously, it's like you walk around all day with your fingers crossed because this guy who has a hard time eating his own pudding, he's on a worldwide stage dealing with world leaders. And it always gets nerve-wracking, I think, to put it likely. As a matter of fact, Ron DeSantis, Florida governor, he'll be the next president in 2024. It's my take.
Bold prediction. Are you ready to bet a stake on that?
I'm ready to bet a stake. Ron
DeSantis
2024. And that's even with all... seriously, even with all the talk of all the other names like Pompeo and Pence and Haley, I'm still, right now, it's Ron DeSantis. And I don't know that there is anybody right now that would make me switch that list around as far as a presidential contender in 2024 who I would like.
You know, Hannah, he's laying this down really early, so that way he can do what he did with Trump. I was the only person in whatever year that said it was going to be Trump.
And it'll be 2032, and I'll be sitting here. And remember back in 2023, guys, when nobody said DeSantis, I was there. I'll be doing that.
And then John Marsh will come in with a question that said, what about that red wave, Branden? How'd that prediction go?
Yeah. I never predicted a red wave.
I know.
I predicted the opposite. Listen, I'm nobody. I have barstool knowledge of politics. That's why I refer to my friend Stephanie Bell on some of these things that require more thinking than I'm capable of doing. But that red wave, and you get nervous sometimes. You know who I got to hand it to? Gary Nolan, host of the Gary Nolan Show, weekday mornings at 9 o'clock. He was the first one. Did I tell you the story 2015 when I supported Trump?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You've mentioned it a few times.
So it's hard then when you evolve on an issue and start saying, you know what, Trump is just not the guy for 2024. That's hard to do, but I got to be honest with myself, and I'll tell you, don't tell Gary this. I don't want his head to get bigger than what it is already. But when he came on and said, yeah, he's just not the guy, Gary kind of made it okay to say, yeah, I hate this, and this is probably going to hurt some people, but Trump is not the guy for 2024, despite where I was in 2015, 2016, and 2020. So I don't see anybody right now that would change my place on the list for as far as DeSantis being at the top of that list. DeSantis yesterday talking about the president's weakness. He's on Fox News.
I don't think any of this would have happened but for the weakness that the president showed during his first year in office, culminating, of course, in the disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan. So I think while he's over there, I think I and many Americans are thinking to ourselves, okay, he's very concerned about those borders halfway around the world. He's not done anything to secure our own border here at home. We've had millions and millions of people pour in, tens of thousands of Americans dead because of fentanyl. And then, of course, we just suffered a national humiliation of having China fly a spy balloon clear across the continental United States. So we have a lot of problems accumulating here in our own country that he is neglecting.
Nothing wrong with what he said there. He is accurate, and he is being factual. We know these all to be facts. Stephanie and I have been saying for a long time, since January 20th, 2021. We're like, man, This is not going to go well. Less than a year into his presidency, you had the sloppy Afghanistan thing in which NATO said that is why Vladimir Putin went after Ukraine, because of Joe's poor handling of Afghanistan. And then the disasters have just continued to pile up. It's like somebody's taking big old heaping scoops of that ice cream he likes to eat, and each lump of ice cream is another problem, and you lump it in. The bowl is like this tall with scoops of ice cream, except they're all problems affecting us on a national stage. 6:35, Christopher Arps is here. ChristopherArps.com, writes for Red State. You see him on Newsmax all the time. You're going to be talking about some more ineptitude on the part of Pete Buttigieg as it relates to transportation and that train derailment in Ohio. That is crazy. I don't live in Ohio. And sometimes I subscribe to the notion, listen, if it doesn't get in my way today, I don't care. But this, like, I feel bad for those people. And I think back when I lived along the Florida Gulf Coast and the BP oil spill, and we were kind of the same thing, like, hey, and we got, the president at the time, Obama, came, and Charlie Crist, who was then the Republican governor, he came all the time. But I get the frustration, like, hey, like you're in the bottom of a big hole yelling for somebody, hey, come help me.
Well, and like yesterday I had my home and everything was fine, and now I feel like I can't live in my home. I mean, many of these people are saying I don't feel comfortable breathing the air, drinking the water, being at my home. And that's got to be frustrating to feel displaced by no fault of your own, and to be asking for help, and to really go to a meeting and not have folks show up to answer any questions. And Buttigieg is over there and saying, well, I sent them a snail mail letter. I got your back.
Dear ye townspeople of East Palestine. It reminds me the letter would probably sound something like this.
And I say.
Kamala Harris yesterday.
And I say.
And I say. By the way, text 874-9390. Jake says Trump and DeSantis combo. Trump is president. DeSantis is vice president. There's a thought. So, Joe, they just surround themselves with just bad people. Like, one of the things we do here on the show is we'd like to surround ourselves with good people like Brian Houseworth. Go ahead, buddy. Take credit.
Oh, thank you.
I like to
wave to the crowd.
By the way, you can watch on the YouTube channel. We are at Wake Up Mid-Missouri. We surround ourselves with good people like Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
And producer Hannah.
What up, yo?
There's John Marsh.
Indeed.
My name is Branden Rathert. Welcome to the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. So Joe's still out on the worldwide stage today. He's going to be in Poland, hopefully not messing things up too much. Meanwhile, closer to home, Missouri Senate. It's committee. They're advancing a bill to ban texting while driving. Now, if you're under 21, it's against the law. City limits like Columbia, they have an ordinance. You're not supposed to text and drive. I know it's the law, but who texts and drive?
I don't do it. I don't.
Well, I know. I believe you.
Yeah. I don't.
But it's against the law, but everybody does it, right?
It's only against the law if you're under 21.
Yeah, under 21.
But now they're saying it should be against the law for everybody.
Everybody.
And it's a bipartisan bill. I think that's very important to emphasize. Senator Greg Razor has had this bill. Senator David Pierce, who's a Warrensburg Republican, who's been termed out for several years, almost 7 now, had the bill before. And it has been there's no real lobby against it, but some are concerned about quote-unquote freedom. The bottom line is people should not be texting while driving. They should not.
I agree.
But it does happen. It does happen, but they should not be doing it. It is distracting, and it's bipartisan. Jeff Porter carried this bill for years over in the House, who was from Montgomery City. He ran for the Senate against Travis Fitzwater and was defeated.
And why would you be against it? Because you get to be like, I'm saving people's lives. Who the heck was pulled over in the last however many years for texting while driving? Absolutely nobody. Nobody's getting, and do you want them to be pulled over? We talked yesterday about 911 response times with staffing shortages and everything else. A lot of times our police officers are kind of our first line responders. Do I want them, going to a domestic violence incident, or do I want them, you're texting while driving, gotta issue you a ticket? I want to know what the numbers are. And I think if you look at the article, it says, like, the number of deaths, primarily it's people who didn't wear a seatbelt. And so let's, like, if that's the issue, if people are dying in traffic accidents because they didn't wear a seatbelt, why aren't we cracking down on that?
If you're going to text and drive, wear a seatbelt at least.
And the article, that number seems low to me. That number I saw there, and you know, they could be underreported, but the bottom line is, it's something that I do expect the governor would sign, but I don't know that he would push for this. It would have to get to his desk. But I do believe the governor would sign this bill.
I want to relate a story to you as it relates to texting and driving. Several years ago, there's a former city councilman in city of Columbia, Michael Trapp, and he did a lot of work for homelessness, trying to help other folks. He was good on that end politically, in between left. But they passed, the city of Columbia several years ago passed an ordinance, no texting and driving. And I can't recall if the ordinance in Columbia is if we get you for something else and we see that you're on a phone, we can get you for that too. But I asked him, had to ask several times, like, come on, this is just window dressing, right? Just, it's, to keep people safe and fine. And after about the third or fourth try, we said, come on, Trapp, it's window dressing. You have no real way to, he says, yeah, you're right. It's window dressing. Please don't text and drive. I'm the only one who's good at it. I'm okay.
False. You're not good at texting, period, much less when you're operating your vehicle.
I remember when the hearings one time, and Brian might recall, there was a hearing one time, and I remember somebody who got up and testified that, well, if my boss is texting me and I don't respond, I'm going to get in trouble, and, why are you not responding kind of thing. And I think the guy who was running the hearing goes, we'll pull over and text him back.
Like, if you ever get a question mark text from Stephanie Bell because you haven't responded quickly enough to a previous text.
I'm angry. You better respond. I need a response quickly. But I think other things they added to this bill, like, I think you also, like, because of the privacy concerns, maybe the law enforcement officer has to now go get a warrant to check your device to see if you were actually on your phone. Now we're really wasting people's resources beyond the fact of, like, the way that they define device. Again, you and I have old cars, but I've been in some of those newer cars lately. There's like the dashboard is like a full-blown computer. So what? I can't use my phone, but I'm on my BMW, operating an actual computer with, music and directions. And this thing, I swear we could have just grown wings and taken this thing out into outer space. The screen itself was half of the dash.
On the rare occasion I get to drive a vehicle that has cameras and this computer screen in the middle to set my heat and to put my radio onto KWOS. And
order your DoorDash.
I prefer my 1995 Ford Taurus station wagon with wood paneling on the side.
Give me a dial or a window that, I can roll up with.
Wow.
Welcome into the show.
I'm serious, though. The technology is not as good. Yesterday, my internet went out, and I didn't realize, but I have, no alarm, right? Because my alarm is internet-based. No doorbell. No smart lights. I can't turn my lights on. I was like, oh, this is bad. I've done something bad. And cars, I think, are the same way with technology.
Tesla just recalled 300,000 vehicles. And I was just asking this question the other day. I don't like the self-driving technology because part of the thing, driving, it's a thing. There's times that, it'd be nice to have somebody else drive and I can work and stuff. But those backup cameras and the lane change cameras, those things in a car, those can go out too, right?
Yes.
Could break down just so if you're relying on your switching lanes and you're relying on a camera to, it's clear, I don't have to turn my head and look. Those things go out sometimes. I don't like it. It's Tesla recalling 300,000 vehicles with the self-driving feature because it's not working. There's a minor glitch. If it's self-driving technology, I wouldn't call any kind of glitch minor at all. Coming up, we're going to do your daily DC rundown. What do you have for us, Steph?
Well, we know folks like Josh Hawley likes to keep his eyes on big tech and scrutinize TikTok and others. But today,
you will hear in this speech vintage Joe Biden. The president has believed passionately in the themes he will discuss tonight for decades.
Jake Sullivan, NSA, previewing Joe Biden's speech, and I don't know if that's a good thing. You'll see vintage Joe Biden today in the speech. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. That's getting us into today's Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
Yeah, that's a tough choice. Vintage Joe Biden or current Joe Biden? I don't, tough choice. Either way, Biden made his unannounced visit to Ukraine, and now he is on his way to Warsaw to give a speech. He wants to talk about Western unity. The unity speech hasn't gone over so great in the U.S. We'll see if he can unify folks on an international stage. In the meantime, we've got we've been getting some intelligence that China might be considering supporting Russia and actually offering some type of military support, I believe. I think that's right. There's some intelligence that they are going to upgrade their current support of just verbal support. And in the meantime, we've got a U.S. congressional delegation in Taiwan who is talking about, cooperation and all of that, despite objections from China. Unity. So there are a lot of things going on internationally that has folks, at least me, feeling quite nervous.
Well, and here's the other thing that I wonder about. Somebody who's got 3 grandkids and a son and a daughter-in-law. I wonder, so if Russia and teams up with China, and eventually there comes a point where we would still win, right? And Russia sees the point where we win. What are they going to do? Launch nukes or something?
I don't know. I thought you were going to say eventually it comes to a point where we just say this is actually World War III. I mean, right? Like, at what point does this, when everyone gets involved, it's getting quite scary. All right. But yes, we would still win. Of course we would.
Amen, brother.
The Supreme Court is taking up a case about Section 230. You've heard a lot about Section 230. It's the law that protects big tech, essentially, other internet providers, initially like comment sections on newspaper articles. That is being challenged. There's a family of an American college student killed in a terrorist attack in Paris. They're trying to sue Google, saying that Google helped spread the extremist messages. Google is saying, no, you can't narrow Section 230. Really, if somebody's going to narrow Section 230, it's got to be Congress, not the court. We'll see what the court does.
Yeah, and again, I don't like the idea of holding big tech companies responsible for stuff like that, because, again, it goes to, well, somebody else is responsible. Oh, about that texting and driving legislation. We're going to get more into this 6:35.
Has America been fair to Donald Trump? The people always know what's going on.
Hi, I'm Becky Arps, and I am so excited that you get to experience a bit of the thoughts I hear every single day. Enjoy.
Chris. Oh, wait, Becky, that's the brains to that whole Arps empire. Just like this.
I'll admit it.
Yeah. And you're lucky to have her.
Hey, I got a question for you right quick. That song that you just played, that was Jamie's Crying, Van Halen.
Yep.
Quick trivia question. What big hit, rap hit from the late 1980s was that song sampled to?
Tone Loc, Wild Thing.
Oh, I thought you didn't know. Wow.
I almost didn't say. I didn't want to ruin your day. It's like, when somebody comes up and says, hey, do you hear the difference between a newspaper and a blender? And you know the punchline, but I try to be a good dude. No, I'd never heard that one, man. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't.
Is that one of those things that everybody knows? Do you think?
I don't know. Now they do.
Good.
Welcome into the show.
That's what I'm here for, to inform the audience.
It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Branden Rathert, Stephanie Bell, John Marsh, Brian Houseworth. Producer Hannah is here. Christopher Arps, ChristopherArps.com. Great website. Since you are listening to the show, I'm guessing you're going to dig what's on his website. And if you accidentally type in Chris Arps instead of Christopher Arps, you'll get into the same place. You also see him on Newsmax TV all the time. Want to see what's been hot on there. But I do want to ask you about this because we're getting some traction on this morning. Apparently, legislation, a Missouri Senate committee has advanced a bill to ban texting while driving. It's already illegal if you're under 21. And I guess it works because I've never seen anybody under 21 texting and driving in a car.
Never.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'm kind of have mixed views on this. It's kind of nanny state-ish, kind of like seat belts and helmet laws for motorcycles. But those laws are to protect you, per se. With the text laws, that's protecting you and the other drivers on the road. So I can kind of go with this one a little bit. I just hope that it doesn't get to the point. I didn't really read the legislation, Brandon, where you can get pulled over just for that. I think I'd have an issue for that, per se, but maybe if you were doing something else and, you were texting too while speeding, maybe they can pull you over. I just don't want people getting tickets just for that. Is that a bad thing?
So, no, and here's where I am. Listen, there's few things in life that's as frightening is like crossing the bridge out of Jefferson City on that very narrow bridge anyway, and somebody next to you, they got one hand on the steering wheel, one eyeball on the road, and the other one on their phone trying to text, and they're texting a letter at a time, hoping that they've guessed the next 2.5 seconds of their life properly so they don't crash. And here's what... pass the law.
You sound like a person with experience doing that. You just described yourself.
Well, so there are rare occasions when I do text and drive. Please don't text and drive.
Of course, one listener pointed out, don't you guys have a morning drive time show with a text line?
Text us your thoughts on this. 874-9390. What do you think?
Pull over first.
Ouch.
What do you think about texting and driving? Should there be a law? 874-9390. We do actually have some texts already on this.
I want to see if you guys have the same experience, because we all text and drive. We know we're not supposed to. But the real dangerous thing about it is that once you start texting and you get into that groove, you almost forget that, you need to look up and drive. And that's how it is for me. It's like, oh, my God, I've had my eye off the road for 4 or 5 seconds texting. I kind of forgot I need to drive, too. Do you experience that?
Yeah,
you're
too much in the moment. I need to pick up some milk, and oh crap, the light's red. But yeah, you do. You get into the thick of it, and you can kind of forget what you're doing. So
that you're actually driving too.
My take is, go ahead and pass the law, and I would think for the most part, nobody's going to do anything with it. At least would be
almost like the seatbelt law.
Remember back in, what was it, the late 80s when we passed the seatbelt law? And a lot of it was the same arguments. I'm in my car. I can do what I want. It's my life. It's my... And you look at the numbers of the people that die in traffic deaths because they're not wearing a seatbelt, and there's a benefit. Should it be the law that you have to do it? So, yeah, we had this conversation about 30 years ago. It was just seatbelts.
And we had it about motorcycle helmets.
Motorcycle helmets. And I'm the same way. If you don't want to wear a motorcycle helmet, don't wear a motorcycle helmet. That's your decision. You know the consequences if something happens.
What about the arguments that people use that people that don't wear motorcycle helmets, you drive up insurance costs overall for everyone else that rides motorcycles because your accident, makes insurance rates go up?
I would think the other motorcyclists that if their rates are going up because of more damages when you're not wearing a helmet, my take would be, and I don't ride motorcycles, my take would be they'd be okay with it. Well, our fellow brother, he made a choice, and I will pay more for it. Off the text, 8749. We're getting text as we're encouraging people. Is it more honest? I feel like it should be more honest instead of saying don't text and drive, because that's not realistic. It's really not. I mean, people text and drive all the time. It's just not realistic. Is it more realistic to say, and forget, I hope I'm not offending anybody or making anybody mad, but maybe we should say it this way. Be careful when you text and drive. What would that be like going down 70 instead of phones down, head up, or whatever those MoDOT signs say?
I think buckle up, phones down.
Buckle up, phones down. What if the MoDOT signs just said, drive and text safely? Be careful.
Let me ask you this, because, when I do text and drive, I normally try to do it when I'm on a highway and when there's no other cars around me, miles ahead of me, miles behind me, no one around me. I feel it's relatively safe to do it then, even though I know I shouldn't. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you scare the hell out of me, Chris. That's my thought. I am just...
Well, he's driving the rush in St. Louis County.
Well, and then when you get...
no one around.
But sometimes there is something important. It's like, I should probably pull over, but I don't. I just don't. That's just the reality, and I should.
I got a wrinkle. What about, does the law apply? What if you're doing voice text?
Yeah.
Does the law apply to that too? Can you voice text?
So that's the thing. If you're holding, what if I'm driving by law enforcement and I'm holding the phone in my hand? It's visible. If you're in traffic and we're at a stoplight together, we're at Grindstone in Providence, and you see me holding up a phone, but I'm not doing anything on it, can I get in trouble for that?
Didn't I read something within the statute that they can't look at your phone to see if you were texting?
Yeah.
Can they do that?
They can get a warrant to look at your phone to see it. Yeah, to try to prove that you were texting. I think the definition of device excludes use if you're using it hands free. But I was thinking too, okay, so I can't use my phone. What about my watch? Have you ever tried to text on an Apple Watch? It's terrible and takes forever. But yeah, I think I could speak into the watch and it could send a text. I don't really know how to do that because that's not why I wear the watch. But yeah, I mean, again, another point we brought up is now if you have a really fancy car, your car is a computer. So Can you not use the giant computer screen on your dashboard if you drive a fancy car? I don't know.
Do you think police agencies would actually go and get a warrant to check someone's phone?
Zero.
To see if they were testing? Is it that serious? Would it be that serious?
The one benefit, if there's enhanced penalties, let's say you're in an accident, and I believe there's more. People talk about the number of accidents that are caused by texting and driving. I bet the number is way higher.
Agreed.
Because if you're in an accident and the cop says, "So what happened?" Well, I was texting my grandmama and I took my eyes off the road and boom, I ended up in the. I don't think those conversations realistically. I don't think they happen. Our guest, Christopher Arps, ChristopherArps.com. He's on Newsmax all the time. Writes for Red State. Website ChristopherArps.com. Couple of texts. Go ahead.
Can I just before you go to? I think though, if there was an accident and they do the reconstruction and all that, they would probably go and look at your phone records to see were you texting, to see was that a cause. Would they do that?
See, and I don't like that either. You just don't need to get up in my business. I do want to read some texts because they're pertinent.
Okay, sorry about that.
Jamie says, I just got pulled over in Illinois because I was on the phone. They gave me a warning. Otherwise, it'd be 250. This what's in this Missouri Senate committee, I think it would be 2 points on your license, which I think would jack up your insurance. Tim, text, Cluck. HVDGUK. I get what you're doing, Jim. And you get some points. Right now, Tim's winning the day, man. 874-9390 if you want to text us your thoughts on texting and driving.
Missouri law permits the use of voice-operated technology or hands-free devices, says the law.
And you need to always be careful when you're driving in Illinois. My wife and I, we drive to New York, we drive to South Carolina, we go through several states, but for some reason, the only tickets I ever get are in Illinois. So be careful. That's just a PSA there.
And this, we could go on for hours on this, and I'm sure it'd be fascinating, but, what about eating? Like if you're in your car and you're eating, a burrito or what if, like my dad, when we'd be in the car all the time, that backhand.
We talked yesterday when we were talking about dogs in cars about how you can't legislate common sense. And I think this may come down to exactly that.
And you know what? This may, if we look at it, this may be a problem that will be no problem in the coming years because we're going to have driverless cars, right? We won't have to worry about this. This is a law that won't be on the books. It'll be on the books, but it won't mean anything in 10 years, right?
Tesla just recalled 300,000 self-driving vehicles because I think they called it a minor glitch in their self-driving system. I would think if you have anything wrong in a car that has self-driving capabilities, it is not a minor glitch. Christopher Arps, ChristopherArps.com. Coming up, some of the big things that are happening on Newsmax TV. We'll continue we got a surprise for Chris, too. It's coming up about 5 minutes from now on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. 874-9390. Chris Arps writes for Red. Great website, by the way, ChristopherArps.com, and I do hope you'll go and check it out. He puts a lot of stuff on there. What's been hot in your appearances on Newsmax TV?
Well, we're still talking about DirecTV's cancellation of Newsmax. A lot of the Newsmax personalities, the big ones like Greta and the Morning Guy, they're doing videos saying to contact your congressman, contact your senator. This is outright censorship by DirecTV, and it can't and shouldn't stand. I mean, Newsmax is the highest rated cable channel in the country, and they're being censored.
What's been your take on what's happening in Ohio? I said earlier, sometimes almost callously, if it doesn't get my way, then I don't worry about it. But this, I feel bad for these people where this train derailed in Ohio a couple of weeks ago.
Brandon, I tell my radio audience, I watch the Sunday shows so they don't have to. I actually listen to them on podcasts. I listen to every Sunday show except Fox News. None of them talked about Pete Buttigieg being AWOL. No, the only one that talked about East Palestine was CBS Face the Nation, and they basically had a panel on train safety. But no mention of Pete Buttigieg's incompetence, no mention that the president goes to Ukraine but can't go to the border or to East Palestine. These people, they just amaze me, with their tone deafness.
Well, Chris, I do want to be fair to Pete Buttigieg. He has reached out to the people in Ohio.
He wrote a letter to Norfolk Southern, like a snail mail letter, yesterday, 2 weeks after the fact.
And this is one of those situations, I mean, you could just milk the PR value out of this. You should be there meeting with the people, telling them that you're there for them. You should be handing out water, handing out supplies. I mean, this is a no-brainer PR exercise that they are completely failing at.
As they do with really everything else. Chris, I mean, really. And this, by the way, coming up, Fox News here at 7 o'clock. Apparently, Russia has suspended participation in the New START nuclear treaty with the United States. He announced that Russia is pulling back from the New START treaty with the United States, which reduces and limits each country's nuclear arsenal. He said, quote, in this regard, Putin said, in this regard, I am forced to announce today that Russia is suspending its participation in the Strategic Offensive Arms Treaty.
And the reason they did that, Putin is pissed that Biden went over to Ukraine yesterday, so this is a tit for tat for that.
Christopher Arps, check out his website, ChristopherArps.com. We appreciate you, bud.
Thank you. Have a great week, guys.
All right, see you. Coming up, Shane Schoeller, former state rep and Green.
Force is rewarded. It will be dangerous for our own security and for the whole world. I regret today's decision by Russia to suspend its participation in the new START treaty.
Russia suspending its participation in the START treaty, which with the United States, basically this reduces and limits each country's nuclear arsenal. Vladimir Putin saying, in this regard, I am forced to announce today that Russia is suspending its participation in the Strategic Offensive Arms Treaty. In his long-delayed State of the Nation address, Putin cast Russia and Ukraine as victims of Western double-dealing. Right before Christopher Arps, who was just here, he says, that's Vladimir Putin. He's just mad because Joe's over there and he's ruffling feathers, so he's just out talking. Here's my reaction. And listen, I will never, ever try to, I don't like to stoke fear and be a fear monger. Like, oh, my God, you all got to, go out and buy dried vegetables and hide in your basement because World War III is coming. I'm not one of those, but I will tell you the feeling that I get is all of a sudden like, it feels like it's 1984 again. And we're watching movies like The Day After on TV, and that was a real fear as a child in the early 80s during the Cold War. That was a real thing. When you walk into your school and it's got, hey, in case the stuff hits the fan, here's where you go for nuclear fallout. Like, those were signs. You saw that in your school, and as a 6-year-old kid, it's a little discerning. And I got to tell you, the feeling reacting to this news that came in within the past hour or so feels a little like 1984, man. I don't know about you. 874-9390, 874-9390. As a matter of fact, earlier today, trending on, what was trending on Twitter earlier?
I thought I saw something that said World War III, and there have been a lot of people saying, like, we're all worried about this and that and the other, but, like, is anyone paying attention that this stuff is really serious and it's brewing? Also trending, obviously, Putin, Russia, Ukraine, all of that.
All right. Welcome into the show. It's Wake Up, so I don't want to be a fear monger. I'm just telling you that's kind of how I feel. I'm like, man, it feels like 1984. Welcome into the show. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Branden Rathert. That, of course, Stephanie Bell. Good morning, Steph.
Good morning.
Houseworth knows what I'm talking about. Child of the 80s.
I remember that, yes. And I remember the kind of being told to hide under your desk. I mean, basically, and I,
which also,
yeah, I remember that for sure.
As a 6-year-old, I never understood when my parents explained the importance of what was going on, and they were explaining to me nuclear fallout, and you're just going to disappear. You'll zap, you'll get so hot, you'll be gone, and life as we know it is just completely done. And I didn't understand that as a kid. Like, what do you mean life is done, is over? And my dad says to me, he says, do you remember what it was like before you were born? I said, no. He says, that's what it's going to be like. It's going to be like that. Wow. But that's what it was like in the 80s. There's Mr. John Marsh.
Yep. Growing up like you on Air Force bases, we were pretty fatalistic about it all at a very young age.
Especially on an Air Force base. When you were at Whiteman, I was at Beale Air Force Base in California. My mom and dad were stationed there, not me. But like on an Air Force base where we housed B-52s and SR-71s and T-38s and all that stuff, and the U-2 spy planes. Yeah, on an Air Force base with spy equipment that was used on a regular basis to check out what the Soviet Union was doing back then.
Kind of on their target list.
Yeah. And I do remember as a kid when we would do these drills, I don't know, like once a quarter or something. And my parents, with that knowledge in mind, if there's a nuclear war, you just zap, you're just gone. But hiding under the desk and put your hands on top of your head.
I remember that.
I was like, what is this going to do, man? There's producer Hannah.
Good morning.
My name is Branden Rathert. Want to bring into the show Shane Schoeller. He is a former state representative. He is the Greene County Clerk. And tomorrow, very cool panel regarding election integrity. Very important conversations that we're having. Shane, if I may, I want to start here, and if you don't want to, that's fine. It's not why we brought you on, but your reaction to what's been happening in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin, and this announcement that apparently Russia is pulling back from the START treaty. What's your reaction to that?
Watching this, as everyone has for, over the past year and really in the past couple months, begin to watch it quite a bit closer. And my opinion is, whether intended or not, President Biden is slowly beginning to back this into a conflict with Russia that's unnecessary, and I'm very concerned.
And, of course, Russia very lightly. I mean, Russia and China together. Concern is maybe you have chosen your words better. My word right now, I don't want to say fear, but you know what it was like, back in the 80s, and that real fear on a daily basis. Shane Schoeller, former state rep, Greene County Clerk, election integrity panel happening in mid-Missouri tomorrow. Kind of give us the one or two top aspects of election integrity that you're going to be discussing tomorrow.
Well, there's a lot of things revolving around election integrity that a lot of voters just aren't aware of. For example, bipartisan election judges, when you come to vote, you're only going to have one Republican, one Democrat that are there to greet you. But there's a lot of things that happen before the election. For example, we're leading up to the April election coming up on the 4th of April. And so we're going to begin testing our election equipment. We have bipartisan teams that certify that election equipment, make sure it's ready for the day of the election. And then, of course, after the election, we'll go through and we'll test that equipment again. And we literally have a test deck that's hand counted, and then it's ran through each of the machines to make sure it's tabulating correctly. But then we even go a step further, and we have bipartisan teams that will we'll randomly draw precincts from each of our counties, and then we'll randomly draw races that will be hand counted as well, just to make sure that what the tape said on the machine when it tabulated results that evening, that the hand count matches that. And if not, then we know we have a concern.
Mr. Schoeller, we appreciate you joining us live this morning. Of course, as Branden pointed out, you're a former Missouri lawmaker, Speaker Pro Tem, and you briefly served as the Missouri House Speaker. I certainly recall that. There's going to be 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans on the panel tomorrow night at the Country Club of Missouri. Our Boone County Clerk, Brianna Lennon, will be there as well. One of the issues that has come up has been photo ID. And there are some concerns. David Tyson Smith, who you know is a Democrat from state representative from Columbia, he's concerned it has impacted the elderly primarily and people that are people of color, in his words. Your thoughts on that? Your thoughts on his concerns?
Well, I think we always want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to vote, that we have access. Since my time as county clerk, I'm in Greene County. I'm in my 9th year now. And, of course, we've had photo ID passed back in 2016. Legislature did change it a little bit over the past couple of years. We've not had anyone contact us and say, I am unable to vote because of the new photo ID provision. Now, that's Greene County. I can't speak for any other county. But I can tell you that every election official I work with, Brianna included, we're always going to make sure that people have an opportunity to vote and be able to help them through that process. And, of course, Secretary Ashcroft, his team will do the exact same thing. And so if someone's having a challenge getting a photo ID, contact the Missouri Secretary of State's office first, and they're going to help you through that process to make sure you get your photo ID.
Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft joins us 7:35 this morning. I know Jay has always been strong, dude, if you don't have an ID, man, I will come and pick you up in my big old Chevrolet jacked up pickup truck, and you can sit in the front seat. We'll go and we'll get you some ID. That's how adamant our current Secretary of State is on that. Our guest right now is Shane Schoeller, former state rep, Greene County Clerk, that's Springfield, doing an election integrity panel tomorrow night in Columbia.
Shane, talk to us about the failure of the Voting Rights Act. I guess that's been a full year ago and all. What that would have meant for election officials like you in the Show Me State. There was a lot of gloom and doom associated with it.
Well, I think the biggest challenge that we've seen with provisions like the Voting Rights Act is oftentimes they're not talking to local election officials. And it's very important when they begin to do that. You've got to talk to local election officials and make sure that they are part of the process. And all too often, what we see at the federal level, that doesn't happen. Of course, in terms of what you're talking about, we haven't seen any changes in that regard, and that's not a bad thing.
Another big topic covered by the legislature, or we think will be covered by the legislature this session, is initiative petition reform. There's several provisions moving. In your position as clerk, or in your seeking the Secretary of State's office, what's your position on those new bills pending?
And did you say the federal level or at the state level?
Sorry, at the state level.
At state level. Last year, the election integrity bill has really kind of been the focus of what, we worked with after the August election in November. And, of course, they banned drop boxes, which I'm certainly supportive of. There are some bills out there this year. None of them are as comprehensive as what we saw during the last session. But one of the things I've been focusing on that I think a lot of voters probably are not aware of is that we do need to add in signature verification into state law. And what that means is when an election official gets an absentee ballot returned, on the outer envelope there should be a signature. Now, by practice, by standard, most election officials check that signature with what we have in the voter registration file to make sure we're getting that absentee ballot back from the voter. But that is actually not in state law that we have to do that. As I tell folks, if someone chooses not to do that, there's nothing in the law right now currently that can hold that election official accountable. And so that's something I would like to see the legislature move forward on.
All right, Shane Schoeller, he's going to be in Columbia tomorrow on election integrity panel, Greene County Clerk, Springfield area. By the way, good seeing you last night at the Cole County Lincoln Days. It was a really nice event. The governor showed up, a lot of folks there. It was cool seeing you there, too, and we appreciate your time this morning.
Absolutely. It's great to be there last night and see everyone in Cole County. So appreciate it.
All right, you bet. Carrie Lake, remember that the whole thing, there's a song, Big Energy, which is the clean version that you would hear on our sister station, Y107.
Yes, I'm familiar.
And Carrie Lake, when she was campaigning in her attempt to become governor of Arizona, was talking about her love for Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, and the next president of the United States of America.
Love the guy. Fantastic. I'm going to tell you a little bit. I just got to spend time with him. Love the guy. Fantastic. He is gutsy. The guy has a backbone made of steel. I'll tell you what he's got. I call it big DeSantis energy.
I had to edit some of that because there's some things that might make some people in the audience a little uncomfortable. So there she says, I love the guy, spent time with him, campaign, and all this good stuff. Now she's putting out stuff linking him to George Santos. All this.
Wow.
She's not a fan.
Well, she's always been tied really closely with Trump. Mm-hmm. And so to the extent DeSantis goes against Trump. Also, she was trying to win an election there, so she was trying to ride DeSantis's coattails.
Coming up, we are going to be doing What's Hot with Hannah. What's smoking today, Hannah?
It's another installment in our Escaped Zoo Animals series.
Becoming a regular feature.
It is.
Can't wait to hear this one. That's coming up 7:25-ish. Good morning. Good morning, 7:25-ish, which means it's
7:26.
Time for What's Hot with Hannah.
We have done several installments in the Escaped Zoo Animals series. There was a leopard that escaped from the Dallas Zoo. I believe a couple monkeys also escaped from the Dallas Zoo. There was an owl that escaped from the New York Zoo. And
lots of papers escaped from the White House.
And there's been some suspicion that people are intentionally cutting the enclosures at these zoos. So there are other zoos in the world, like Japan, where they're seeing these stories and they're deciding to be proactive and practice some drills for if that were to happen in their zoo. And the solution, and there's video of this posted on the Wake Up Facebook page, the solution that they came up with for this escaped animal drill is they chased a guy around the zoo who was wearing a bear suit. So there's just really great...
Wait, they didn't use a real bear?
No.
And the lesson is you're supposed to chase the bear?
Well, they were just practicing, I guess, their emergency maneuvers for... It looks like they're essentially using cars and nets to kind of push him into a corner so then they can tranquilize him and safely get him back into his enclosure. But it's a video of a guy running around a zoo in a bear suit. And he even goes as far as mimicking, when he gets the sedation and he lays on the ground and they're poking him with a long pole to make sure he's out. It's pretty entertaining, I think.
When you put on a bear outfit, is it proper to wear, like, let's say you're going to, let's say like we did a couple weeks ago. We went to some grade schools in Jefferson City, and we went and read to kids. If you're going to read to kids and you're dressed up as a bear, are you supposed to put shorts on the bear?
Yikes.
How does that work?
I just wonder, is this drill as useful as hiding under your desk, protecting yourself from a nuke?
Which
one is more or less useful?
Well, apparently this zoo has gone viral for this before. They've made employees dress up like lions or zebras. And they just chase them around the zoo, essentially, to practice if an animal were to ever get out, I guess. But it's pretty entertaining if you want to go check out the video on the Wake Up Facebook page. At least I think it's funny.
Doesn't the St. Louis Zoo have haunted night at the zoo? Wouldn't that be terrifying? You're there with the lights and all of a sudden a fake animal is chasing you.
It's a big old bear. Don't worry about it, kids. It's
yeah, but it's not a scary bear suit. It's like a teddy bear suit.
Oh, that's so frightening. A big, giant teddy bear is running around the zoo giving out free hugs and lollipops.
Saying only you can prevent forest fires. That's what it looks like, kind of, right?
Yeah, kind of.
Welcome to the show, man. We appreciate you being here. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Coming up a few minutes from now, Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, he is joining us on the show. And I'm really excited about this guy, 8:10 this morning. I hope you'll join us. John Combest, he's got a website, kind of deals with Missouri politics, but he's written something called Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, a Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attack. Pretty stoked. He joins us at 8:10 here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri as we get ready for our 17th annual Missouri Credit Union Miracles for Kids Radiothon. Benefits MU Healthcare.
I regret today's decision by Russia to suspend its participation in the New START treaty.
That's news we've been learning in the past hour or so. Russian President Vladimir Putin announcing Russia is pulling back from the New START treaty with the United States, which reduces and limits each country's nuclear arsenal. I think Christopher Arps, ChristopherArps.com, had kind of an interesting take. He says, Putin is he's just upset that Biden is over there rattling the cage. Can't wait to see what Randy Tobler's take is on it. Randy Tobler's here at 4 to 6. I want to tell you about the Randy Tobler show. When I talked to people last night, Steph and I were at the Cole County Lincoln Days, and talking to people and mentioned the Randy Tobler show, and this came up more than once. They said, Randy Tobler, he's like a deep thinker, and it's entertaining. And I thought, Hannah, we could do a liner for the radio station. Randy, welcome into something to the effect of Randy Tobler. He's a deep thinker. Branden Rathert, not so much. What do you think? For a liner? Oh. Welcome into the show. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Branden Rathert. John Marsh is there. Stephanie Bell. Brian Hausworth, producer Hannah. Another one of the folks at the Cole County Lincoln Days yesterday. So you had Governor Mike Parson. He was there. A whole bunch of people there. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, also at Lincoln Days last night, Cole County. Jay, let me ask you, what was a highlight or two for you from last night's event?
I just love seeing people. I love talking to people about what we need to be doing, about how Missouri can make changes in the law to create better opportunity for people. But I'm a public servant, and I love meeting with the people.
And I think it's what I enjoy about these events. We're always talking about getting involved, do this, do that. These Lincoln Day events, there's one coming up in Boone County. I think that's going to be in April. They happen all over the place, whether you're in Callaway County, Montauk, Randolph. They happen all the time. Cool thing, because you can go. It's a bunch of people that are just as smart as you, and you're all talking about the same things. One of the things, amongst several things that Jay and I, the Secretary of State, spoke about last night, ESG, and what you have been doing with that. Kind of give us the rundown on that, Secretary.
Yeah, ESG is an idea in investing where you invest not for the greatest financial return, but you invest for some sort of social gain or social change. And what we've seen is there's been a problem with some investment advisors that are giving investment advice based on what they want to have happen instead of what's necessarily in the best interest of their client. So you might be trying to save up for your retirement or something, and you want to get the highest rate of return on your money you can, and instead they're suggesting something that, unbeknownst to you, will give you a lower rate of return because of some social agenda your advisor has. Securities are underneath my office, and we just put out a rule to make sure that investment advisors, broker-dealers know that it's a fraudulent business transaction if they're not disclosing to you why they suggest an investment, and if they're doing it for some social agenda of their own instead of what you want. It's your money. You get to decide how it's invested, and all the material facts need to be disclosed to you.
Why can't we do the same with Social Security on a national level? I know that's how, but man, you explain it so simply, and I'm thinking, yeah, why don't we do that with Social Security? Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft joining us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Jay, we just talked to...
Go ahead.
We just talked to Shane Schoeller about voting rights and all that, and I think back some 20 years to the days immediately after 9/11 when your father, Attorney General John Ashcroft, was making remarks about the 9/11 attacks, and he immediately pointed to protecting voters' rights.
It is important. We need to make sure that we have elections that are accessible, that are credible, and that are secure. If you don't have that, then you lose faith. Well, I hate to say you lose confidence in government. We've already done some of that. But you lose confidence in the ability of we, the people, to make the decision. So it's incredibly important that we have accessibility, we have security, that we have credibility. And then, of course, no election is good if we, the people, don't participate, if we don't spend the time to self-educate and make our voices heard.
Mr. Secretary, we appreciate you joining us. Tomorrow evening, there will be a free, and it is free to open to the public, Country Club of Missouri in Columbia will be hosting a program. 2 Democrats, including Breonna Lennon, and 2 Republicans who both served in the Missouri House, Shane Schoeller and Kurt Barr, will be on the panel. They're going to talk about election security, and they will answer questions from the audience as well about how to improve election security. From your perspective, and I know you're not listed on the panel, what would you recommend, things you would recommend for improving election security, Mr. Secretary?
I'd love to see us have written into statute a better way to do audits so that people can have more confidence. You have people that don't trust the machines. You have people that don't trust the hand counting of ballots. I'd love to see a better, more stringent requirement for random audits so that we can use the machine counts to get a quick count, but then we have a good hand count audit to make sure that we check ourselves. I'd also like to see some statutory changes with regard to residency. So if someone has multiple properties, be they in the same state or in different states, it's clear where they should vote so that everyone has one place that should be their residence for voting and not more than one. And I should say, I really appreciate the election authorities that are being a part of that question and answer time. One of the problems I think we've had with elections is we've had election authorities that have kind of said, hey, I don't have to answer questions. I know this. Leave me alone. We all should be available to the people of the state, and it really helps people to have confidence when they can ask questions and get a good, honest, truthful answer.
That's a good point. 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans on that committee.
Any thoughts on initiative petition reform as it has started to make its way through committees and through the legislature on the specific proposals that are included in the bills that are currently pending?
You know, I'm not exactly sure which proposal will end up being the proposal that the legislature favors. I favor any proposal that makes sure that if an initiative petition is passed, it's really representative of what the people of the state want as a whole, not just a bare majority. I'm not in favor of making it harder or more difficult to put something on the ballot. I think it's good to have those discussions. But if you can't get a strong majority across the state, both urban and rural voters to support something, then maybe you should try it out statutorily, or at least shouldn't be in a constitution.
Our guest Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft. You ever read the Jefferson City News Tribune?
I do at times. I do. I love to read, and I try to get as much information as possible to make the best decisions I can.
So there was an article a couple of weeks ago with the headline, Motive Behind Secretary of State's Frequent Testimony Questioned. And Ryan, okay, I already hear your reaction. How do you, because you have been doing a lot of that, how do you react to an article like that, Jay?
Well, I think there's 2 reactions. One, I've always felt that the people of the state are paying me a salary and they expect me to work. So I have always been willing to testify. I think I was the first statewide official that would go and testify alone on his budget. And I've always been involved with legislation. Our office pushes more legislation than any other statewide. The answer to that question is simple. I believe I should be a public servant and I should be working for the people every day I can. Secondly, I really think the answer is easy, but I think there's a subtext of another question that really ought to be answered. And to me, that's why aren't more statewide? Why aren't more statewide spending their time testifying and being involved in committee work and being involved in pushing legislation? Isn't that why we're there? Aren't we supposed to be public servants?
Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, anything else that you would like to add this morning?
Just thank the people for allowing me to serve and remind them we have our general municipal elections coming up. They can reach out to the local election authority to find out what's on the ballot and get a sample ballot so they can self-educate, not just listen to people on the radio like me, but they can self-educate and make sure they make the decision that's best for them.
And by the way, every time we have somebody like Secretary of State comes on, or Governor Mike Parson, or anybody who comes on, it's always somebody behind the scenes that makes this stuff happen. Last night, Stephanie and I were speaking with several legislative assistants last night, and I made a point to tell one of them, you guys, you really do a lot. It's almost like 911 operators. We talk about first responders. A lot of times we forget 911 operators, but we forget legislative aides, and we forget assistants, people like Joe Don Cheney, who's always very, very beneficial whenever we deal with your office. And I feel like it's important that once in a while we let those folks behind the scenes that are facilitating these things, we let them know and give them a public shout out for the good work that they do.
You are right. I appreciate that. I couldn't do nearly as much as I do without the people that help me and make sure I am where I need to be. So thank you for mentioning that. I should have mentioned it myself.
Yeah, you tell him today, boss.
I will.
All right, Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, 93.9 The Eagle, 104.5 News Radio, 950 KWOS. 48 hours from now, there is a palpable excitement, and I think not just here at Zimmer, but even across Mid-Missouri, because for 17 years now, we've been doing our annual Missouri Credit Union Miracles for Kids Radiothon to benefit MU Healthcare Children's Hospital. This starts Thursday. It goes into Friday, so it's going to be a different show on Thursday and Friday. It's different. It's an opportunity for you to help folks, and we have folks, and is what we do. We raise money for equipment to cover the cost of life-saving equipment and support programs at the MU Healthcare Children's Hospital. They do life-changing work there, and you can help change lives. Folks like Wendy Sprouse, Modig Industries, Allstate Consultants LLC, just some of the folks that are going to be helping us out. That goes Thursday and Friday. Coming up a few minutes from now, we talk about these folks that they're looking, some of these folks, they're not mad unless they got a reason to be mad about, unless they've got something to be angry about. And sometimes that goes wrong, and sometimes people jump the gun. We have one of those stories coming up 5 minutes from now.
What's great about Narcan is that there's no contraindication, which means you can give it to somebody that you think is overdosing, and even if they're not going to have any long-lasting side effects.
That's Kelly Miller, CEO of Central Ozarks Medical Centers, chatting with KOMU Channel 8. I thought it was interesting. Narcan, of course, that's the thing. If you think somebody's overdosing on an opioid, you hit them up with it, and it's supposed to save their lives. But Narcan is going to be available in vending machines in the Lake of the Ozarks area. I guess it's a good idea. I don't know. It just strikes me as kind of odd. This potentially life-saving stuff in a vending machine.
And that it doesn't hurt you if you like take it and you didn't need it. That's bizarre, but I guess I'm glad to hear that from a medical professional. For me, it kind of sounds like, we talked a little bit about the Good Samaritan laws, like where you're absolved from liability if you call to get help. And I think, if you saw someone overdosing, maybe you would think like, oh, I need to call law enforcement. They'll have Narcan. But here, if you have any concerns about being implicated, this would allow you to go to a vending machine and grab it and help someone without necessarily getting other folks involved. Is that like it's just more accessible? I mean, I think
it's
something...
free.
Okay, it's free?
Yes, it's free out of the vending
So
machines,
why wouldn't...
at least the ones at the lake.
So if you were somewhere, maybe like, I don't know if people do that stuff in bars or what. If you had an establishment, why wouldn't you just go get some and keep it in your business or in your car or whatever if you were worried about it?
Yeah, or just not do it. Dude, I wasn't overdosing on opioids. I was just dosing. I was taking a nap, man.
And I guess I don't know how long do you have between like the overdose and when you have to administer it? I don't know that answer.
Welcome to the show. It's just weird the things that are acceptable nowadays, and I'm not doing the old man out on the front yard waving the newspaper in my bathrobe. It's just different. That's all. I know numbers in Boone County, at least for 2022, there were at least 25 fentanyl. Fentanyl is an opioid. 25 overdoses just in Boone County, 2022. Most of those, large majority, younger people. Fentanyl. Where does fentanyl come from? It comes from Mexico. It comes from China. It goes from China to Mexico, and our closed borders, the fentanyl comes through, and it kills young people here in mid-Missouri. Welcome into the show. I'm Branden Rathert. There's Stephanie Bell. Producer Hannah. John Marsh is here. I'm excited. Coming up at 8:10, John Combest. This is one of those folks I like genuine. Seldomly do I get excited. I got excited one time when I met Garth Brooks. But other than that,
is this another man crush of yours?
No. I admire the work the guy does. He kind of does like an aggregate for state of Missouri kind of news.
Yeah, he posts headlines, and he's done it for a really long time.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you ever want to take a day off? Like, I mean, because when we take a day off, we get to sleep in, we get to take a day off. But I don't know. We'd have to ask. I don't know that he's taken a day off since he started.
He's written something called Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, a guide to recovering and rebuilding after online attacks. And I think this is, it's interesting, obviously. We know what happens on social media, whether it's just trolling or it's actual harassment. But a guide to recovering and rebuilding after online attacks. He's here at 8:10 on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, 93.9 The Eagle, 104.5 News Radio, 950 KWLS. I love it when folks, I'm a big believer, there's a large number of people, they're not happy unless they've got something to be mad about. Like Uncle Ned, every Thanksgiving. He'd sit there and he'd be quiet, but man, if there was something that he was mad about, he was happy to talk about all these. He would have been a great talk show host, frankly. But he wasn't happy unless he had something to complain about. And sometimes people do that, and they react too quickly. I hope this is going to work here. Randy Scott, he's a dude on ESPN, going back and forth between a couple of Michigan State basketball games, men's game, women's game. And in the men's game, they're taking some time out to honor those that were killed in the on-campus shooting. So he talks about that, shows some video. Then he goes to the women's basketball and gives some highlights on that. while he's doing that, then he goes back to the men's game, but it's what he said that got people a little freaked out.
The women's program holding down the fort there in East Lansing, taking on 8th-ranked Maryland. And Iseline Alexander going to spin, make a layup inside. Michigan State cutting the deficit to just 6, but Diamond Miller was too much. 29 points. She has 25 or more in 4 of her last 5.
So there he's given, these are highlights from the women's basketball game.
Miller and Maryland, 66-61 winners. It's their 4th straight win. Let's get back to the actual basketball there in.
So they said, let's get back to the actual basketball. And Don Lemon was sitting there at the anchor desk with him.
He's coming back, apparently.
Apparently, he's got to do some formal training as opposed to the informal training when it comes to misogyny at CNN. They're going to do formal training. But folks got upset. What do you mean go back to real basketball? And he lays it out. He said, well, is what we were talking about. If you were following and not looking for something to be mad about, he says, we did the moment of silence in Ann Arbor, then the women's basketball highlights. And then when we said get back to the actual basketball, we meant the actual basketball following the moment of silence. People looking for stuff to be mad. John Combest, he's here at 8:10. Good morning.
what is happening.
Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters.
Great news for the American people.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Branden Rathert, featuring Stephanie Bell, News Director Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you.
Get ready, pal. And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
It was a big President's Day for our current president because earlier this morning, Biden made a surprise visit to Kiev. Boom. There you go. I assume it was only a surprise to us and not to the Ukrainians. Incoming! It appears Russia is attacking Kyiv with a very slow-moving White Walker. Okay, no. False alarm. We have subdued him with butterscotch.
Stephen Colbert, ageist and cultural appropriation, all in a matter of 15 seconds. And you're not supposed to imitate somebody else's accents, right? I thought that was cultural appropriation. And then the age jokes from a progressive, no less. Stephen Colbert there. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Welcome into the show. I am Branden Rathert. There's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
John Marsh is here.
Yes, sir.
Brian Houseworth and producer Hannah.
What up?
Want to welcome into the show. It's kind of interesting. So a few minutes ago, we were talking about our guest coming in. He's here now. His name is John Combest, and I've been familiar with the dude for a lot of years now because he has this. And let me ask you, John, do you get mad when I compare it to like the Drudge Report, but it's for people in Missouri?
It's quite flattering to hear that, yeah, and it's absolutely modeled after the Drudge Report.
All right, it's a blatant ripoff.
Absolutely.
But it's Missouri. That's what makes it different.
For sure, yep.
So if you're interested like in the Missouri politics, a lot of heavy slant on there, it's johncombest.com. But I was getting excited because there's a lot of people here, the radio station over the years, whether it's callers or guests, and I've been here for coming up on 8 years. There's a lot of people I talk to I've never met in person. And so on the rare occasion, I'm like, I get to finally meet this guy in person. And Hannah says I was maybe man-crushing a little bit. And I'm like, no, that's not. I'm just excited.
You have a tendency to develop these man crushes, so I was just checking.
Well, I consider it quite flattering. And I mentioned this to Steph last night. The last time that I was in mid-Missouri was about a year and a half ago. And I came to Jefferson City for the memorial service for our friend Steve Walsh. And I heard Branden speak, and Branden and I hadn't met until today. And I wanted to begin by saying that was my introduction to you, of hearing you. And I knew Steve since 2002, and you did him right by your remarks. People don't post memorial services online, but I wish it was online, and I wish people could hear what you said about our friend Steve.
Man, I remember that because I don't like public speaking. And I'd never done it at a funeral before, but I thought, okay, I've got some notes, and got up there and what do they say? Speak from the heart, and got way more emotional than I ever. Man, it was. Well, thank you.
But I wanted to begin with that because it was moving, and I know Steve meant a lot to so many of us. So you did him right that day.
Steve Walsh. Matter of fact, Hannah, and this kind of gets us into our topic. Hannah got nailed on social media. So following, of course, he used to be married to former state representative Sarah Walsh. Right. He worked for Hartzler for a long time, and people said some nasty things about the dude when he died as it related to COVID. Producer Hannah went on to, I think it was Twitter, and said something.
Yeah, I was pretty disgusted that folks were commenting on Sarah's post announcing the death of her husband. All these horrible things about him being an anti-vaxxer and not taking the COVID shot, and essentially saying good riddance. And that didn't sit right with me. And I put up a tweet, talking about how I thought that was disgusting, and people came out of the woodwork to come tell me I was wrong.
And Hannah, I saw that, and I'll mention too, so the book is called Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, and it's a guide to recovering and rebuilding after online attacks. And I want to tell you that although the case studies in the book are fictional, and they're not based on anyone that anyone here in the room knows, in Chapter 2, we talk about a woman who is an elected official whose spouse dies of COVID-related illness, and what she endures with social media trolling, people essentially dancing on a grave just to be mean for political purposes. So I was writing the book. I began writing the book in April of 2021. So I was well into the book. before Steve passed and before Sarah dealt with this. And one of the things that we talk about in the book is, folks that come to your aid. There's people in the world like Hannah, and then there's people that I call the milquetoast majority, who are your very passive friends who just kind of let stuff slide, who don't reach out to you. How do you address the milquetoast majority? And how do you address the people who are attacking you? These are the things we cover in the book.
So, and by the way, this just now occurred to me. You know how, like in Washington D.C., anytime they come up with a law, they've got to word it just right so it comes up with a cute acronym. Maybe I'm the last one to the party here, Steph, but I'm just now getting this. John Combest in studio, website johncombest.com, aggregate of Missouri news. But if this were a law in D.C.,
watch it.
Stalking, harassment, internet trolling.
It's an acronym.
A guide to recovering and rebuilding after online attacks. So the Hannah instance, I don't know if you offer advice or guidance, but
for sure.
Somebody says some horrible stuff and Hannah, what's your guidance there?
Well, so for each of these cases that we go through in the book, we look at what is good advice that folks get from people who care about them, and then what's some bad advice. So some of the bad advice that we get when we're enduring an online attack is, number one, people say, just delete your social media. Well, if you're someone who relies on social media as your main point of contact with your friends, even more than text messages or phone calls, if you rely on Facebook or Instagram, if you delete your social media or you swear off of it, you're isolating yourself. And that's one of the worst things you can do when you're under attack. Another bad recommendation that people give is, well, just create another anonymous account. Just fight fire with fire. So pretty soon you're creating your own anonymous Twitter. Hannah could have gone out and created her own anonymous Twitter to fight back to people. And then all of a sudden you're carrying that with you. You're trying to keep your multiple accounts straight. And we talked about this a little bit before we went on air, but so much of what we talk about, there's so many great companies out there that advertise on stations like this one and other stations that talk about defending reputation and improving your search engine results. What happens to the person that was attacked, the small business owner, the elected official, the activist, after the search engine results are optimized? What happens to the person? What happens in their heart? What happens in their head? We keep looking for external solutions like Google search results. We're looking for an external solution to an internal problem.
So what you're saying is if something bad on the internet is out there about me, I can pay someone to go clear that up.
That's exactly right.
But I'm still experiencing the trauma or maybe the isolation of having that event happen to me, and that SEO cleanup doesn't help me in my day-to-day life.
You're exactly right. And one of the other things that we hear a lot, and look, I'm a Gen X guy, I'm 45 years old. I grew up in the era of, rub some dirt on it, and sticks and stones may break my bones, right? But I think you can hold both of these thoughts. I think you could say that we as a society need to toughen up and not be so offended if somebody's mean to us on the internet, and at the same time acknowledge that those attacks piss us off, that they hurt. They affect the same fight or flight mechanism. When Hannah saw that written about her friend, I bet her heart rate accelerated, her pupils dilated. If somebody posted pictures of your kids in a blog post attacking you, you would get that fight or flight mechanism and want to strike back right away.
How about that? Our guest is John Combest. Check out his website, johncombest.com. It's like a Missouri drudge. It's an aggregate of Missouri news. He's also got a book, fascinating stuff. Now I'm not going to be able to say it without laughing because I'm 16 years old sometimes. Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. He's joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
John, what about those attacks that start as just online stuff, and we think about the ones with celebrities like the Kardashians and the Jenners and Justin Bieber that actually go to physical confrontations and people getting hurt or even killed?
Yeah, and, so I should have probably prefaced all of this with the idea of if you feel like your health is in danger, or your family is in danger, obviously contact your local authorities. And I talk about that throughout the book as well. It's really, as you mentioned, it's a challenge for people whose entire currency is based on their social media metrics and their internet value and their clicks. I mean, talk about a double-edged sword. You want as much publicity as you can possibly get, but along with that comes a percentage of people who will like you for, or will dislike you for no reason.
Does that, and I don't want to be critical here, but those people that, well, they said this about me on social media, or people, oh, they must not like me. Is that, I don't know, it speaks maybe to the person's self-worth.
Absolutely.
A little bit.
And, you know, one of the things that I'm most proud of the book is underscoring. This was originally part of, there's a process called the Sedona method, which I talk about in the book. But the idea is, if you look at an online attack, exactly what you're talking about, Brandon, of when we see one tweet that really makes us mad, we think about, does it affect our need for approval, our need for control, or a need for security? So we want all three of those things. And when we post a cute picture on Instagram, or we post from, you know, Cole County Lincoln days where local celebrities were last night, when we look at any kind of a tweet that attacks us, we have to break it down in terms of, are we really craving approval here? Are we craving control of what people will say about us? And do we need the security? Do we say we don't want to say anything that might get us fired? So those are three main cravings that we have that social media feeds upon. And in fact, our trolls will attack our need for approval, control, and security. That's how they get us.
Yeah, in reading your book, I think we have to check ourselves, especially in some of those things. I was like, yeah, I'm sure I've gone to social media and posted something, you know, as a result of one of those three things, and I think I can be like more aware of that in the future. But also, I mean, the thing that really struck me in reading your book, I think a lot of people are familiar with many of the articles that you write for the Missouri Times, and it's witty and funny, and I appreciate it. I like the WWE references, since my son is a big WWE person. But like, I know you had an article about, you know, how to earn an election silver medal and things to quit in 2023, and the fig leafing thing. That was hilarious. People are still doing that. I agree with you that they should not do it. I think they should throw up the peace sign. But anyway, so really witty, but, you know, none of that in this book. Really serious, well-researched. I appreciated the Sedona method and some of the other, you point people to other references. So can you talk about, you know, the differences in writing styles and, you know, how you came to write this book?
Yeah, and, you know, after I've done the website for 21 years every day, and I've been blessed to have, you know, our mutual friend Scott Fawn at the Missouri Times. I'm blessed to have him publish my columns on occasion, and I like to joke about a lot of stuff and poke fun at political personalities. But I wanted to write a book on this topic with zero punchlines. The book is 121 pages and zero punchlines, because if you're going through internet harassment or attacks right now, and you feel your family's under attack and you're under attack, the punchlines can wait till later. And I wanted to give people actionable steps to take right now. There's really nothing funny about online attacks and harassment.
Can you hang out with us for a
Absolutely,
while?
I'd be happy to.
Stephanie wants to do the morning bell. We're going to talk about business news with a little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you. Off the text, somebody says, can you please spell John's last name? It's Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest. And through your website, can we get the book?
You can find a link there, and if you go to Amazon, you just look for my last name, Combest, or if you could look up online attacks or online harassment, you'll find it on Amazon.
And you're cool to hang for a while? Coffee, water?
I came here for you
beer.
guys.
Need a beer or anything?
Not today.
All right. Coming up, Morning Bell, business news, a little twist only Stephanie can get you. What do you have for us, Steph?
Well, we've been hearing a lot about the 4-day
what case that was. We might have to Google that one later. But maybe the person had the Google search results pushed down to the second page. Who knows?
So what made you decide to want to do that? Did something happen, or why did you say, I'm gonna do this thing here?
I've dealt with over a period of time. Again, if you express any sort of opinion online, people are going to come after you. And I've dealt with some of this, starting with anonymous attacks in 2005. I went through a really, really rough time in 2017 dealing with this firsthand, really vicious attacks. And I've been writing this book in my head since that period of time. And didn't start putting pen to paper or writing it on a laptop until 2021. But as somebody who's lived through it and seen the firsthand devastation, I knew that there was something better that could come out of it.
So you're coming at that, you're talking from experience.
Absolutely. And the book is not autobiographical, as we've talked about. The book is, in the preface, I mentioned a little bit about my experience and really rock bottom for me. But there's so many great autobiographies from political folks that are out now. And it's great to put yourself in their shoes sometimes and look at their lessons. But if you're going through the rage machine right now, you don't want to invest yourself in somebody else's life story. You want actionable steps of what to do right now.
And I kind of along the same lines, I want to bring up a personal story that kind of is it's an example of one of the things you talked about in dealing with some of that stuff. We'll do that and some leftovers. Then it's the Gary Nolan Show. Man, there's a lot happening here this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. 93.9 The Eagle, 104.5 News Radio 950 KWOS.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Serving the leftovers. Enjoy.
Some of the things we didn't get a chance to get to on the show today, we open up our little mini dorm room size refrigerators. We look in there and see what we have in the way of leftovers. And today it's not too shabby. It's another helping of John Combest, johncombest.com. Missouri stuff, man. It's like the Drudge Report, and apparently that's a compliment. It's like the Drudge Report, except it's Missouri stuff. And of course, the Drudge Report, man, they got famous. The whole Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky. Nobody knew what the Drudge Report was until that, and it was the late 90s, and it was kind of a thing. You have taken that and perfected that for us Missourians. I would highly recommend you check this out. Stalking, harassment, internet trolling, a guide to recovering and rebuilding after online attacks. And this is not like, hey, you hire this company, they'll clean up your internet history. And do you know this might be out of your purview, but I've heard you should never Google yourself.
Yeah, so we talk. It's a very masochistic thing. So for some people who are into that, and I described it as, again, I had a conversation with somebody about this yesterday. When I was a kid in St. Louis, we used to go to the zoo every year. And there's an analogy here about Google, but I'm deathly afraid, I shouldn't reveal this on the air, of tarantulas. Can't stand them. If there was one in the room, I would run away right now. And we would go to the insectarium at the zoo, and I knew there was a tarantula in the case, and I'd kind of look out the corner of my eye, and that's how people feel about Google, because you kind of want to see what people are saying about you, but do you want to look in that mirror and see what the truth is?
And I think some of it, too, is a little bit of the fear factor. We like to be afraid. We like to get on this roller coaster.
It's masochistic.
It scares the heck out of us. And I want to mention one of the things that you kind of highlighted is, some of these things, talk to friends about it, or be kind of open about it. And I've shared this story before with my friends here on the show and on the air. For a lot of years, I was worried like somebody's going to case net me and find, oh my gosh, he got arrested for stealing a Blimpie sandwich in Salt Lake City in 2013 while he was drunk off his rear, or for whatever it was going to be. And I was petrified for years. I was worried about that. And I got sober almost a year and a half ago, and got open about some of the things I'd done, the way I'd behaved, and put it out there in the open. I don't worry about that stuff anymore. I stole a sandwich from Blimpie at the airport in Salt Lake City one time. But I'll tell you, and this is weird, this speaks to the times. You know what freaks me out the most, John? Somebody's going to get on YouTube and find some of my very poor, politically incorrect stand-up comedy.
I can pull it up right now. Is that what you want to do? Do you want me to play audio?
But that scares me more.
And Branden, we've talked about this before, and I wrote about this in the Missouri Times at one point, which is you are not your Google results. And no matter what people think about big tech, and giant air quotes there, has done a great job of telling us you have an online identity. You are your Instagram, you are your Twitter, you are your Facebook. You are not your Google search results or your Instagram profile or your resume. And you are not whatever happened with a Blimpie sandwich. You're your ability to make good decisions today.
All right, John Combest, johncombest.com. Anything else that you want? A fascinating conversation. We could preempt the Gary Nolan show and just hang out here for.
I really appreciate you guys having me. And this is I've been around the political world since I began volunteering in 1994, and I'm really proud of the website and everything I've done with that. But this is by far the most meaningful thing that I've done in my career. This means more in terms of helping people that are going through this. And by the way, it applies not just people who've been viciously attacked somehow on social media, but for friends and family who feel like they're a little bit too addicted to what people are saying about them on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. There's lessons in this book on that.
So are you in your prime?
I'm in my twilight. I feel like I'm in my. What were we saying about Biden earlier? Was it the defects? What was the agent of the defects?
Yesterday, the reporter, it was Martha Raddatz from ABC, and she asked Kamala Harris, well, with Joe, they were talking about their poor, dismal approval ratings, and she said something to the effect, well, with Joe Biden and his age and his defects. I was like,
age and other defects.
Rude, right? Because it's not just a weakness. It feels like you can overcome the weakness,
right.
But a defect feels like something inherently
it was born with you. It's in your
bad,
chromosomes.
And
it's in your DNA.
I'm not going to say that Biden doesn't have some defects.
So thank you for having me on. And folks can find the book going to Amazon or your app and looking for Combest, or look up online attacks.
And it's an easy read too.
It is.
I mean, it's small. just like a quarter of an inch thick. And it's good stuff. John Combest, thank you, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, coming up, Gary Nolan Show tomorrow. Attorney General Andrew Bailey. He's here at 7:10 on the show. See ya.
Bye.